Welcome to Lesson 5 of Confirmation class. Today we're going to answer the question, how does God preserve the world? We're on page 20 in your workbook. At the top you see again the first article of the Apostles' Creed. I'm not going to read the whole thing this time since we read it all last time, but I want to focus on the middle paragraph of what does this mean. And I believe that God still preserves me by richly and daily providing clothing and shoes, food and drink, property and home, spouse and children, land, cattle, and all I own, and all I need to keep my body and life. God also preserves me by defending me against all danger, guarding and protecting me from all evil. Today we're going to see how God preserves His creation, and so we're going to look at 1 Kings chapter 17, verses 7 to 16. This is an account about the prophet Elijah and the widow in Zarephath. At this time, the whole region was in the middle of a drought so severe that there was little food anywhere to eat. So God sent the prophet Elijah to a woman and her son in a town outside of Israel called Zarephath. Right now, pause the video, take some time, and read these verses from 1 Kings chapter 17. Number 1. God sent Elijah to a widow who had no food for her and her son. If you were the widow and Elijah had asked you for food, like he does in verse 10, how might you have responded? Well, you might have thought, you're crazy, Elijah. No one has any food. You might have been offended. You might have been shocked. You might have felt sad that you couldn't give anything to Elijah. There's all kinds of ways that this request would just seem ridiculous. Number 2, God promised that the oil and flour would not run out until it rained again. What would have made the promise difficult to believe? Well, they didn't have enough food to share, but if God makes a promise, we can be certain that He'll keep that promise. God's not like us where even if we want to keep a promise, there are sometimes circumstances where we just can't keep the promise. But God not only wants to keep His promises, He always can keep His promises. Number 3. What was special about the woman, her son, or Elijah that would cause God to work such a miracle to take care of them? See, for example, verse 9. Nothing, really. It doesn't say there was anything special about these people. The widow and her son's names aren't even recorded here. But in His mercy, God chose to provide for Elijah through the widow. Now, God doesn't typically work this way. He doesn't usually provide for us through miracles, though He certainly can. Read Psalm 104, verse 14. Pause the video here. Take time to read the verse. How does God typically provide the things that we need? You have the verse there in front of you. He makes grass grow for the cattle and plants for man to cultivate, bringing forth food from the earth. How does God typically provide? Through natural means. Natural means is one of our key terms. It means the processes God built into the creation for taking care of us, like the plants growing, and even the plants getting their food from sunlight and rain, like parents taking care of their children, like animals eating the plants and then becoming our food as well. God has provided all those ways to provide for us. Number 5, how does God use natural means to provide for us on a daily basis? Here are some ways. He gives us families to take care of us and skills so we can earn an income through a job. He uses the rain and the sunshine to produce food. He gives us clothes and everything we need. But God doesn't always use natural means. He doesn't always provide for us that way. Instead, sometimes he uses a miracle to take care of us, like he did for Elijah, the widow and her son. A miracle is an event by which God provides for us directly, not using the natural means he built into the creation. Again, we see God's power to create, like he created more oil and flour for the widow and her son. Whether God provides through miracles or by natural means, what can you be certain that God will always do for you? Take a moment now to read Psalm 145, verses 15 and 16. You have the verses in front of you. The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food at the proper time. You open your hand and satisfy the desires of every living thing. Though we don't know how he'll do it in every case, we know that he will provide what we need. And so in addition to his power to create, we also talk about God's power to preserve. Preservation is God taking care of the universe he created through natural means and or miracles. We'll talk more about God's preservation by providing us with daily bread when we get to that part of the Lord's Prayer in Lesson 28. Number 8. Why has God promised to take care of us and provide for us? He does all this because he loves us. There's no other reason. It all starts with him. He loves us. And so he wants to provide for us. Like parents want to provide for their children and make sure they have what they need. Number 9. God also takes care of us by protecting us from bad things. Read Psalm 50, verse 15. Take a moment now to pause the video and read the verse, and then answer the question, what is one way that God deals with bad things that come into our lives? The verse says, "Call upon me in the day of trouble, I will deliver you, and you will honor me." God rescues us from trouble. Maybe you can think of a time when you were in danger and you got out of it and you don't know how, or you do know how, but God is the one who ultimately rescued you from that trouble. Maybe he sent someone to save you or provided the circumstances to get you out of that. Number 10, read Romans 8, verse 28. What is another thing that God will do with bad things in our lives? Take a moment to find that verse, to read it, and then to answer the question. He will use bad things to work good. Notice he doesn't say work all good things for our good, or that all things that happen to us are good because they result in good. No, there are plenty of bad things that happen to us. The promise is that even the bad things will produce a good thing later on, maybe that we can't see yet. Now turn to Psalm 91, verses 9 through 12. Take a moment to read those verses. What is another thing that God might do with the bad things in our lives? He might even stop those bad things before they come. You could think of an example of a little kid wanting to jump off the playground equipment, but it's really high and they could get hurt. If they jumped, they might even break their leg. But God kept that from happening. Maybe he used their mom or dad to tell them, don't jump from there or you'll get hurt. He stopped the bad thing before they even could happen. Read again Psalm 91, verses 9 through 12. How does God often protect us from bad things? He often sends his angels to protect us. Now, we can't see his angels working, but he tells us that he sends his angels to guard and protect us, to keep us safe. The thing about angels is that they are more powerful than we are. Of course, not as powerful as God, but more powerful than we are. They can do things that we can't do to protect us. And so we have another key term, angel. Angels are God's messengers whom he sends to take care of us. Take a look at Jesus' words in Matthew 6, verses 25 to 33. Pause the video now to read those verses and then answer this question. If we worry about food or clothes, what does that say about our trust in God? Worry says that we don't trust God to help and provide like he says he will. But there is a difference between being worried and being concerned. What is the difference between worry and being concerned? Worry expresses doubt that God has a solution. Worry thinks that no one can solve the problem. Concern acknowledges that there is a problem, but it trusts God to help. I'm not going to say there are no problems in life. Of course there are. But we are concerned about them, trusting that God will provide a solution whether we can see the solution coming or not. So for all these things God does for us, providing for us, protecting us, guarding and defending us, preserving us, how can we show our thanks to God for providing for us and preserving us? By being content and thankful for all the things he's given to us. Content means that we're satisfied, we're happy with what he gives us, not always looking for more, not saying, well, I really wanted that instead of such and such. We're happy with what God has given us because he gives it to us out of love. On the bottom of page 22, you have a chart there showing God preserving his creation. On the one hand, he provides for us, either by natural means or by miracles, richly and daily. So giving us more than we really need on a daily basis, every single day. He also protects us. At times by keeping evil away from us, and at other times by making evil serve our good. And one of the ways he does this is through thousands of superhuman angels. Angels who are with you, protecting you, guarding you. You talk about guardian angels. We can't see them, but they are there to guard and protect us. So our lesson question for today. how does God preserve the world? God preserves the world by providing what we need through natural means and or miracles, and by protecting us and working good things from bad things. Before next time, take a look at the Moodle site, do the Lesson 5 worksheet, and memorize the memory work that goes with this lesson. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you next time for Lesson 6.